When the internet was first introduced, people couldn't believe that information from anywhere in the world could reach them in seconds. When online payments arrived, many were afraid. What if my money disappears? When online shopping started, people laughed. How can I trust something I can't touch? Every major technology that changed the world was first rejected, then feared, then misunderstood, and finally accepted as normal life. Today, we are standing at the edge of another such transformation, a technology that many people are scared of, many don't understand, and many blindly criticize. That technology is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not something you can see, touch, or hold in your hands. It exists only on the internet, and that is exactly why many people don't trust it. But if you look closely, most of the money you use today also doesn't physically exist. More than 90% of the world's money exists only as digital numbers inside computers. Cash is already becoming rare. Money has always evolved, and Bitcoin is simply the next step in that evolution. In the early days, Bitcoin had almost no value. At one point, people could buy a Bitcoin for a few rupees. There were even times when thousands of Bitcoins were given away for free just to test the system. Today, one Bitcoin is worth lakhs of rupees and has crossed tens of lakhs during peak cycles. This dramatic rise naturally raises questions. What exactly is Bitcoin? Why does it have value? Who controls it? How does it work? Is it legal? Is it safe? And most importantly, does it really have a future, or is it just a risky experiment? To understand Bitcoin, we must first understand money itself. From the beginning of civilization, humans used many things as money: salt, grains, shells, livestock, gold, silver, coins, paper notes. Over time, money became lighter, easier to transfer, and more abstract. Today, money has become almost completely invisible. When you send money through an app, nothing physically moves. Only numbers change in databases. Bitcoin takes this idea to its extreme form: money without banks, without borders, without permission. Bitcoin was introduced in October 2008, right after the global financial crisis, through a 9-page document called the Bitcoin White Paper. It was released by an unknown individual or group using the name Satoshi Nakamoto. To this day, no one knows who Satoshi really is. But what Satoshi created was revolutionary: a digital currency that does not depend on any government, central bank, or organization. Traditional currencies like the rupee or dollar are controlled by central banks. Governments can print more money whenever they want. This is useful in emergencies, but over time it reduces the value of savings through inflation. Bitcoin works differently. Satoshi programmed Bitcoin with a strict rule: only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. Not 21 million per country, not per year. Total, forever. This fixed supply is one of Bitcoin's most powerful features. Scarcity creates value. The more people want something that is limited, the higher its demand becomes. Bitcoin runs on a technology called blockchain. Blockchain is like a global digital ledger that records every Bitcoin transaction ever made. This ledger is not stored on one computer or one server. It is copied and synchronized across thousands of computers around the world. This makes Bitcoin extremely difficult to manipulate or hack. To change a transaction, someone would need to control the majority of the entire global network at the same time, which is practically impossible. When someone sends Bitcoin to another person, that transaction must be verified. In traditional systems, banks or payment companies act as middlemen to verify transactions. Bitcoin has no middlemen. Instead, it uses a process called mining. Powerful computers compete to solve complex mathematical problems. When a problem is solved, a group of transactions is verified and added as a new block to the blockchain. This is why the system is called blockchain, blocks linked together in a chain. The people who run these computers are called miners. As a reward for verifying transactions and securing the network, miners receive newly created Bitcoins. This is how new Bitcoins enter circulation. Over time, mining becomes more difficult and the reward decreases. This process is called halving, which happens roughly every 4 years. Each halving reduces the number of new Bitcoins created, slowing supply and increasing scarcity. In the early years, Bitcoin mining could be done on normal laptops. Today, mining requires massive data centers, specialized machines, huge electricity consumption, and advanced cooling systems. This increasing difficulty is intentional. It ensures that Bitcoin remains secure and that new coins are released slowly and predictably. Bitcoin is unique because it is both money and a payment network. Traditional money requires separate systems to move value: banks, payment gateways, clearinghouses. Bitcoin does not. The currency and the network are the same. You can send value directly from one person to another anywhere in the world without permission, without borders, and without waiting for business hours. This makes Bitcoin especially powerful for international transfers. Sending money across countries using banks can take days and cost high fees. Bitcoin transactions can happen within minutes and often at lower costs. Because of this, Bitcoin has the potential to save hundreds of billions of dollars globally in transaction fees every year. However, Bitcoin is often misunderstood as being completely anonymous. In reality, Bitcoin is pseudonymous. Wallet addresses do not show names, but every transaction is publicly visible on the blockchain forever. With enough analysis, activity can sometimes be traced. This transparency is one reason governments are shifting from banning Bitcoin to regulating it. In India, Bitcoin faced strong resistance initially. The RBI warned users repeatedly. In 2018, restrictions were placed on crypto-related activities. However, in March 2020, the Supreme Court lifted these restrictions, stating that a complete ban was unjustified. Today, buying and selling Bitcoin in India is legal, but it is not officially regulated. This means users must be careful, as there is no protection if something goes wrong. Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency. Today, there are thousands of digital currencies, each experimenting with different ideas. But Bitcoin remains the strongest because it was first, it is the most secure, and it has the largest and most decentralized network. Many institutions, companies, and even governments now hold Bitcoin as part of their reserves. One famous incident shows how far Bitcoin has come. In 2010, a programmer used 10,000 Bitcoins to buy 2 pizzas. At that time, it felt reasonable. Today, those Bitcoins would be worth thousands of crores. This story is not about regret. It shows how early technologies grow in unexpected ways. Bitcoin's price moves based on demand and supply. Because supply is limited and demand keeps growing, the price has increased over time, though not smoothly. Bitcoin is extremely volatile. Prices can rise sharply and fall just as fast. This volatility is why Bitcoin is not suitable for people who cannot handle risk. Bitcoin is not guaranteed success. It is not a shortcut to wealth. It is a long-term technological experiment that challenges how humanity thinks about money, trust, and control. Some people will benefit, some will lose. That is the reality of every major innovation. What makes Bitcoin truly powerful is not its price. It is the idea that money can exist without permission. That idea has already changed the world, whether Bitcoin succeeds or fails in the future. Bitcoin also introduces a completely new way of thinking about ownership and control. In the traditional system, even though money appears to be yours, it is always under someone else's control. Banks can freeze accounts, governments can impose withdrawal limits, and access can be restricted during emergencies. Bitcoin works differently. If you control your private keys, you control your money. No bank approval, no government permission, no office hours. This concept is called self-custody, and it is one of the most powerful yet dangerous aspects of Bitcoin. Powerful because it gives freedom, dangerous because responsibility is 100% on the user. Lose your private keys, and your Bitcoin is lost forever. No recovery, no customer care, no reversal. This is why education is more important than investment when it comes to Bitcoin. Most losses in crypto do not happen because Bitcoin failed. They happen because people fall for fake apps, phishing links, scam messages, unrealistic profit promises, or store their keys carelessly. Bitcoin itself has never been hacked at the protocol level. The system is strong. Human mistakes are the weak point. Understanding wallets, security practices, hardware wallets, backups, and basic digital hygiene is essential before even thinking about investing. Another major reason Bitcoin attracts attention is its role as a hedge against inflation. Inflation silently eats away the value of savings. You may not notice it daily, but over years, the same amount of money buys less and less. This happens because governments print more currency when needed. Bitcoin cannot be printed. Its supply schedule is fixed and visible to everyone. Because of this, many people treat Bitcoin not as everyday spending money, but as a store of value, similar to gold, but digital, portable, and borderless. Bitcoin adoption has also increased due to institutional involvement. Earlier, Bitcoin was mostly held by individual investors and tech enthusiasts. Today, large investment firms, hedge funds, and publicly listed companies hold Bitcoin as part of their portfolios. Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, have made it easier for traditional investors to gain exposure without directly managing wallets. This shift from retail-only to institutional participation has increased Bitcoin's legitimacy and reduced the chances of it being dismissed as a temporary trend. One common criticism of Bitcoin is its energy consumption. Mining does use significant electricity, but the conversation has evolved. A growing portion of Bitcoin mining now uses renewable energy sources such as hydro, solar, and wind. In some regions, mining actually helps stabilize power grids by consuming excess energy that would otherwise be wasted. The debate is no longer simply about energy usage, but about how energy is produced and managed. Bitcoin also benefits from a strong network effect. Every new user, miner, developer, and business strengthens the system. The more people use Bitcoin, the harder it becomes to attack or shut down. This is the same reason the internet itself became unstoppable once adoption reached a certain scale. Even if individual countries restrict Bitcoin, the global network continues to operate. Bitcoin has also changed how younger generations think about money. People who grew up with smartphones, apps, and digital ownership naturally understand wallets and decentralized systems. For them, Bitcoin feels logical, not strange. This generational shift plays a major role in long-term adoption as beliefs about money evolve over time. At a deeper level, Bitcoin forces society to ask a fundamental question: what gives money value? Is it government backing, physical form, collective belief, mathematical rules, or scarcity? Bitcoin combines all of these in a new way. It is backed not by armies or laws, but by cryptography, transparency, and global consensus. This is why Bitcoin continues to be studied, debated, criticized, and adopted at the same time. It is not just an asset or a currency. It is a new idea about how money can work in a digital world. Bitcoin's story also connects deeply with trust, or rather, the lack of trust in traditional systems. After the 2008 global financial crisis, millions of people realized that banks considered too big to fail were actually fragile. And when they collapsed, ordinary people paid the price. Savings vanished, jobs were lost, and governments printed massive amounts of money to rescue institutions. Bitcoin was born in that exact environment. Its very first block contains a hidden message referencing bank bailouts, clearly showing why it was created. Bitcoin is not just technology, it is a reaction to broken trust. Another important aspect of Bitcoin is transparency. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on the blockchain, a public ledger that anyone can inspect. You cannot see names or identities, but you can see the movement of coins. This level of transparency has never existed in traditional finance. Governments, banks, and corporations operate behind closed doors, but Bitcoin operates in the open. Anyone with an internet connection can verify the total supply, transaction history, and network rules. This openness is one of the reasons Bitcoin is trusted without needing a central authority. Bitcoin also introduces the idea of programmable money. While Bitcoin itself is intentionally simple, the logic behind it has inspired smart contracts and decentralized finance systems. Even today, Bitcoin can be locked with conditions, time delays, or multi-signature security, where multiple approvals are required to move funds. This makes Bitcoin useful not just for individuals, but also for businesses, escrow systems, inheritance planning, and secure long-term storage. Another key point people often misunderstand is volatility. Bitcoin's price swings are dramatic, but this is common in emerging technologies. Early internet companies also experienced extreme volatility before stabilizing. As Bitcoin's market size grows, volatility has slowly reduced compared to its early years. Long-term charts show a clear pattern: sharp rises, deep corrections, long consolidation, and then new growth. This cycle repeats because adoption grows in waves, not in straight lines. Bitcoin has also created a completely new profession: miners, blockchain developers, security auditors, analysts, educators, and content creators. Entire economies now exist around this ecosystem. Countries that recognize this early have benefited by attracting innovation, talent, and investment. Others are still catching up, slowly realizing that banning innovation does not stop it. It only moves it elsewhere. Another major discussion around Bitcoin is financial inclusion. Billions of people around the world still do not have access to banks, but many of them have smartphones. Bitcoin allows anyone to participate in the global financial system without paperwork, credit scores, or approval. For people living under unstable governments or weak currencies, Bitcoin can be a lifeline rather than an investment. Bitcoin's resistance to censorship is also critical. Transactions cannot be blocked based on identity, beliefs, or location. This is why journalists, activists, and people in conflict zones sometimes rely on Bitcoin when traditional systems fail or are weaponized. At the same time, this neutrality means Bitcoin does not judge how it is used. Another reason why responsibility and ethics matter. Over time, Bitcoin has evolved from something laughed at, to something feared, to something studied. Central banks monitor it. Universities research it. Corporations integrate it. Governments tax it. This progression, from ridicule to resistance to acceptance, is common for every disruptive technology in history. Bitcoin does not promise a perfect world. It does not eliminate greed, scams, or inequality. What it offers is choice, a parallel system that operates by math instead of trust. Another powerful idea behind Bitcoin is scarcity by design. In the physical world, scarcity usually comes from nature. Gold is rare because it is hard to find and mine. In the digital world, copying is effortless. Before Bitcoin, no one had ever solved the problem of digital scarcity. Bitcoin solved it by combining cryptography, consensus, and economic incentives. That is why people often call Bitcoin digital gold. Bitcoin's halving cycle plays a huge role in its long-term behavior. Approximately every 4 years, the reward that miners receive for adding a new block is cut in half. This event is called a halving. Halvings reduce the rate at which new Bitcoin enters circulation. Historically, every halving has reduced selling pressure and, over time, increased scarcity. This is one reason why long-term believers closely watch these events. Unlike traditional markets where rules change suddenly, Bitcoin's monetary policy was written from day one and cannot be altered easily. Another important topic is energy usage. Bitcoin miners seek the cheapest energy available, which often comes from surplus or wasted energy, hydroelectric overflow, flared natural gas, wind energy during off-peak hours. Instead of competing with households, Bitcoin can actually stabilize energy grids by acting as a flexible buyer of last resort. This is why many energy experts now see Bitcoin mining as an incentive for renewable infrastructure rather than a threat. Bitcoin also teaches a lesson about personal responsibility. In traditional banking, if you forget your password, the bank can reset it. In Bitcoin, if you lose your private keys, your Bitcoin is permanently inaccessible. This may sound scary, but it is also what makes Bitcoin truly yours. Not your keys, not your coins, is a common saying in the Bitcoin world. It reminds users that self-custody is both freedom and responsibility. Security in Bitcoin is layered. At the protocol level, it is protected by cryptography and decentralized consensus. At the user level, it depends on how carefully wallets are managed. Hardware wallets, cold storage, multi-signature setups, and time locks all exist to protect Bitcoin holdings. Over time, tools have become more user-friendly, making it easier for non-technical people to store Bitcoin safely without relying on exchanges. Another fascinating development is institutional adoption. What started as a niche experiment has now entered boardrooms and balance sheets. Public companies hold Bitcoin as a treasury asset. Investment funds offer Bitcoin exposure. Bitcoin also reshapes how people think about time and value. Fiat systems encourage spending because money loses value over time due to inflation. Bitcoin, being scarce, encourages saving and long-term thinking. Many users describe this shift as psychological as much as financial. When people stop racing against inflation, they start planning for the future differently. Education, family, health, and innovation take priority. Culturally, Bitcoin has become more than money. It is a movement, a philosophy, and for some, a belief in open systems. Communities form around education, meetups, and online discussions. Bitcoin's future does not depend on everyone believing in it. It only depends on enough people choosing to use it. It can coexist with traditional systems, compete with them, or simply act as an alternative. One common criticism of Bitcoin is energy usage. Yes, Bitcoin mining consumes electricity, but the reality is more nuanced. A growing percentage of mining uses renewable energy like hydro, solar, and wind. In India, Bitcoin is not illegal. Buying and holding Bitcoin is allowed. However, it is not yet fully regulated, which means investors must be cautious. Profits from Bitcoin are taxable, and losses are your own responsibility. The most important lesson with Bitcoin is simple. Never invest money you cannot afford to lose. Bitcoin can grow, crash, recover, and grow again. Its history is volatile, but its long-term trend has followed adoption. Bitcoin is not just currency. It is not just technology. It is a question about trust, control, freedom, and the future of money itself. So now the real question is not what Bitcoin is, but what Bitcoin means to you. Bitcoin does not force anyone to believe in it. It does not promise guaranteed profits. It does not claim to replace everything overnight. What it offers is a choice to participate in a system where rules are written in code, not changed by power. History shows us one clear pattern. Every revolutionary technology is ignored first, mocked next, feared later, and finally accepted when it becomes unavoidable. The internet followed this path. Smartphones followed this path. Digital payments followed this path. Bitcoin is walking the same road, slowly, quietly, and relentlessly. If Bitcoin fails, it will be because people chose not to use it. If it succeeds, it will be because enough people understood it before they needed it. That decision does not belong to governments, banks, or corporations. It belongs to individuals. You don't need to rush. You don't need to gamble. You only need to learn. Because in a world that keeps changing faster than ever, understanding money might be the most valuable investment you ever make. Now tell me, do you see Bitcoin as risk, revolution, or opportunity? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this video helped you understand Bitcoin clearly, support the channel by liking and subscribing.